everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to have you crafting with me today. In today's video, we are working on a little spooky project, and I will just preface this that there are spiders in this video, not real ones, pictures from various books, photos, illustrations, etc. So just a little warning if that's something that bothers you. I personally don't mind the old spider. Living in Australia, we get quite a few of them in and around our house, so it doesn't really help us to be too afraid of them. But you know, keeping in the Halloween theme, we are working on a cute little no-sew accordion journal today, using some pages from a dictionary. We actually end up using two different dictionaries in this project, but as you can see, I've just pulled out a bunch of little pages, and it is going to be like a little pocket-sized one. It's very cute, very tiny, and it's going to have a little bit of a mail theme, as in MAIL, postal theme. And so I've pulled out a bunch of pages from this little pocket dictionary, and I've folded half of them in half, and we're just going to create a 4-page flip kind of accordion style journal. So as you can see, I've taken one page and then reinforced it on one side by using two folded pieces of book page overlapped, and then I'm going to sort of repeat that process 4 more times so that we end up with 4 pages but 8 fascias. So you know, front to back, we've got 8 different slides to work on, which includes the cover. And I really wanted this book to have a very much an interactive feel to it. So on each page, sort of have something you can interact with. We're going to be making some pullouts, some extra flips, even a little puppet. So I'm very excited to get started here. As you can see, I'm just working my way through these pages, building them up front to back with the folded extra pages. Now, one thing I will say is pull out a bunch more pages than you need, and then just keep building them up. The thinner your paper is, this paper is quite thin because obviously it's a dictionary and the pages are, you know, always very thin. They contain a lot of information, and keep building up the pages as you see fit. Check the integrity of the hinges. It's not a very big fold out journal, but each page is kind of going to hold a little bit of weight. So we want those pages to be nice and robust, and likewise with the folds and the hinges, we want those to sort of be nice and robust as well. And I have glued these down, making sure that the rough, raggedy edges, though I still want them to show, for this particular journal, do want everything to be nice and clean on the edges. So I'm gluing them down with the ratty edges facing inwards at every opportunity. They do bring a nice bit of texture to the page on the inside. So, you know, you'll still see some of those little edges poking through, but on the actual top and bottom and the sides, we want everything to be nice and smooth for this one. So cleaning up everything and building out those pages one at a time. And I did want to also mention that, yes, I did take a teeny tiny break from YouTube. I had some grown-up things I had to deal with, some tax things and my shop update. So just those things that, you know, unfortunately everything takes so much time when you're in a small business. And I just even though I did have a whole bunch of Halloween projects planned, I had to just get my ducks in a row. So that's why there was a little break here on the channel, but we are back, and this spooky project is definitely bringing the feel of the season onto my crafty desk, that's for sure. So next, in order to keep building up those pages, as I mentioned, I am just going through and adding some more blank, straight, flat pages on every second slide. So as you can see here, I've got one sort of like interlaced slide, then one flat slide, and then one interlaced slide, and then one flat slide. And I did that on the front and the back, which meant that each face had like definitely like a nice thick base to it. So as you can see, it's just going to be a little one. It's just a tiny little journal, but we are going to be filling almost half of it today in today's video. So quite a few little paper projects coming in the next hour. So grab a snack, grab a drink, grab something that you're working on, and we can do some of these projects together. I'm so enjoying just creating these little mini projects, like working on Drawloween. I'm still, as this video goes live, it'll be almost to the end of Drawloween. We've got just over a week to go. Filling a complete journal rather than just working on a page here and there is so satisfying. I've really been enjoying it. So here we go with some spider images, everyone. So just bear that in mind if you're, kind of get the willies when you see spiders. But this was a great book to work with because it had some really large images. And yes, I know what you're thinking, girl, that journal is so small. But trust me, I have a plan. So this particular image, the reason I chose it was because the spider's legs are nice and thick. Typically, obviously, spiders have quite skinny little legs. And for this particular interactive part of the journal, I really wanted it to have some thicker arms and legs to work with. So that's why I chose this one. However, it was kind of the wrong color. It's got like kind of a deep purpley bluey color to it. I don't know if that's accurate to this real life spider. I forgot to check what kind of spider it actually is, what species. But I decided it was just a bit too blue purple color. So I'm just going in with some acrylic paint here, and no fancy skill required, just sort of sploshing it around. This is kind of a fawny color and just some black. And obviously that means that this is not going to be true to life for this particular species, but this is an art journal. It's not a scientific journal. So we're letting that slide, and we're just going to kind of give it a more neutral color scheme, just with some black, and blending that in just gently with, it's not a teeny tiny brush, it's kind of like halfway between a medium size and a really skinny brush, but no rhyme or reason to this, and certainly not really too concerned about light sources. It's just where the original image had some white or lighter colors, that's where I sort of plopped down the fawny color, and then where it was darker, I added the black and then just blended them into each other as I went along. So certainly not any sort of technical painting here. I just wanted to kind of give it a bit more of a handmade look, and also just get rid of some of that blue and purple color scheme. And if you know, and you know me, I love to add swatchy paint to my journals, like if you've done paint swatches or pencil swatches, and there was just a bit too much paint there for me to let it go by without somehow salvaging it for the rest of the journal. So I did make a little painty page here to use at a later stage. So I've put that spider away to dry, and I'm just trimming down the edges of the journal because we're working on a little envelope for our giant spider to live inside. And I'm using a really beautiful handmade paper envelope for this. It's got like some leaves and flowery bits and textures. It's beautiful paper. And I'm tracing out the size of the page it's going to sit on. And then I need to go through and just make it smaller than that. So bringing it in by about between 0.5 and 1 centimeter smaller than the size of the page. Now, there was a bit of a learning curve with making this envelope. I don't really think about these types of things when I do it. I just go in and do it. So I didn't really measure anything. And one thing I wish I'd done differently in making the flaps for this envelope is the top flap, which is, the bit that you normally stick down or tuck in triangle wise. I wish I'd made that just a bit bigger. I just sort of measured sort of halfway and then cut it into a triangle shape like an envelope would be. But it ended up not tucking in as smoothly as I would have liked. And, if I was just making this on any other day, I would have, maybe redone it. But, because I was filming and I just was like, no, we're just going to roll with it. We're just going to roll with it. Yeah, like make it work. So instead of it tucking in from the top, I sort of ended up having to feed underneath itself, which is a little bit awkward. But, this journal is just for me, so that's all right. But just a word of warning, do what I say, not what I do kind of thing when watching this little envelope building session. I just sort of went, I don't know, I didn't really measure anything, as I say. I just sort of found the edges, made little lines, made some diagonal lines inwards, and sort of hoped that it would all sort of cover each other, which it did. But as I say, I needed it to be just a little bit bigger on either the bottom or the top flap. So, looking at this now, I was like, man, if only I'd just made that just a little bit longer right at the top there. But anyway, we worked with it. It was fine. So once I'd cut the envelope out here, I sort of then used my bone folder to score it in and got it sort of ready. And it was here that I sort of realized like, oh, maybe I should have made that just a little bit bigger, because I then measured out the sort of little slot to tuck the nose of that envelope, the top flap in, and it just wasn't quite deep enough. And also because what I'm sticking in here is quite deep and thick, that also kind of proved a little bit tricky for this particular slot placement and the tip of the envelope to sit in. It just didn't quite sit in there properly, but that's okay. We're working with it. You live and learn. Like, this is all part of crafting, right? Paper crafting is, just working with what you've got and enjoying the process rather than the outcome. So I then, as you saw, I rounded off the edges with my scissors because my little corner rounder didn't quite fit on these weird angles. And I'm going in with my watercolor pencils now just to add even more aging and interest to this beautiful paper. I started out with like a dark brown, and this is to just sort of bring in a little bit more interest around and texture and age to look around the edges. I sort of tended to keep my pigment around the edges and corners of the envelope, starting on the inside here. And this is such a great way to, of course, you could use your your inks and things like that, but I don't have any of that sort of stuff. So I've just got the old timey version. So just using a couple of watercolor pencils in sort of an aged tones, so the dark brown as you saw, and then like a kind of an amber colored, fawny colored one, I suppose, and then going in with my trusty watercolor brush. This paper really soaked up that water, so I've popped that aside to dry, and now it's time to fussy cut out our giant spider. I did stick it to just a piece of scrapbook paper with a grey facing outwards. So this particular design on this side, I couldn't really see myself using that for anything anytime soon. So I did also plan to use the rest of this piece of paper for maybe building out a cover. So I just went in, roughly cut it out so that I could get my scissors into those joins a bit easier, and fussy cut around all of those legs and arms. And I didn't worry about the little hairy bits there. They're a bit too fussy, but yeah, just went in and cut around everything, and the paint actually adhered to the glossy paper really well. It didn't flake off, or how sometimes you can paint on glossy surfaces with acrylic paint and it just kind of falls off. It's so frustrating, but yeah, no, this was fine. This turned out really well. So I can recommend that would be a great way to cover up some of that gloss paper, as well as changing the color. after I'd cut out the spider, I then did the same process to the envelope with the watercolor pencils, but this time on the outside. So setting that aside to dry. And now comes the fun part. We are going to articulate our giant spider, and this is why I needed those legs to be as chunky as possible. These are a small brad that I'm using to attach these legs, and if you don't know, brads are just like a little metal pin with 2 arms or legs on them, and you can use them to articulate your paper because whatever you sort of use them to join together will move. So they're great for creating closures, but my favorite way of using them is to create little paper articulated characters like this, or adding, a moving arm, or, creating movement on the page. So the way I've done this, and it does, this is also something to bear in mind, it does shorten the legs of your spider or whatever you're working on a little bit, because you do have to then overlap certain parts of your image to make them sort of join up. So this spider does end up being a little bit smaller in terms of the leg length. So I've added a join at the sort of end. So I cut the leg into 2 pieces plus the body. So 3 joins per leg. And you just use your knife to add a little tiny little hole or a little indentation in your paper, big enough for the leg to, the brad to poke through. And then you're just going to push that brad through both the top layer and the bottom layer, and then splay those brad legs out, right? So once you go all the way around, you can sort of see each piece has 2 joins, but 3 areas, if that makes sense. You've got the body, and then the first join of the leg and the second join of the leg. So 2 joins, but 3 pieces per leg. Okay, so next we are working on, in my dream of doing this little spider puppet, I wanted her to be holding another envelope, like a mini envelope. This particular part of the project ended up evolving into something else because I just couldn't physically get the envelope to sit the way that I wanted to in her teeny tiny little arm. So what I have is a little pre-made envelope that I already had in my stash, and I've taken the little dictionary term which says spider on it, cut it out, and because it's so small, it managed to fit inside the envelope. So this is another little interactive part of our journal here, and I've taken the same scrapbook paper that I've used to back the spider, and we're going to create a little pull tab for this spider definition to be able to pull in and out of this teeny tiny little envelope. As I say, it's going to be something we're going to use a bit later on in the project, but because I'd planned to sort of use it in this with the spider puppet, it seemed logical at this stage to do this, but we're going to save it for later on. But all we're doing here is I've got the definition of the spider from the dictionary, cut that out so that you can actually fold it in on itself, and now we're creating a little pull tab, which is just basically a circle that sits on top of a rectangle, and we're going to cut a little slit in the top of the definition so that it can kind of fold over that little circle part, and that'll create a little pull tab that will hopefully join up and work together neatly. So I'm adding some glue to the rectangle part of our tab only, and then we're going to slide that through the little slit that we've made in the top of the spider definition. That's going to fold in on itself. Oh, look at that. I love it when a plan comes together. How absolutely perfect. And then that'll stick down to one side, and then we're going to glue that together. And we do need to trim this down a little bit because it's just it's just a bit too big for that little teeny tiny envelope. So we're going to fasten that all together. do a little check to see how easily it's going to fit, trim it down, and make sure it's nice and snug, but also that it can be pulled in and out easily, because, you know, obviously you don't want anything too obstructive if you want your journal to sort of stay intact but be interactive easily. Like, there's nothing worse than trying to create like little tabs and little cute things, but they're so fussy that, you know, you sort of don't want to interact with them. I wanted this to sort of be able to pull in and out quite easily, which it does pretty well, apart from the fact that it's so tiny and my fingers were like you need to use your fingernails to pull them in and out, but that's okay. So next up, we're just adding some more detail to the inside of the envelope. Obviously, even with all of that delicious watercolor painting that we did, it was still quite plain. So I wanted to sort of make it seem like she's been nesting in this envelope. I'm sorry if that's triggering for people, but I wanted her to be sort of at home in this envelope. So I'm adding some spider webs here just with a black pencil. I was a bit concerned using a pen that it might sort of seep through and that you would be able to see it. And obviously the flaps on this envelope are going to be double-sided. So I just used a pencil to start. I did change my mind about that later on after doing a little test. But to make sure that it's going to stick down, I did use a PVA wet glue here, and that's going to hold the brads that are sitting on the actual body of the spider kind of in place, right? We want that to be nice and strong so that they'll still move around, because the paper is the part that's moving, not the brad. So the brad will stay intact, and then the actual leg part will be the part that will move. So we want that wet glue to really set down nice and firm. So I've left that to dry, and then I've still used my same, these are the Prismacolor Very Thin black pencil. As you can see, I've used it quite a lot. It's very tiny at this point, but I'm just going to add like a little bit of faux stitching around the edge of the envelope. I added a little heart on the join there, super cute. And that's just going to bring a little bit of detail into that tiny little envelope. Moving on, that glue, PVA glue, is still setting. So we're going to move on to the next interactive part of our journal. And I found this really fabulous timeline of images on how spiders build their webs. And to me, it just really spoke to this being like all about mail and posting and things being delivered to your house. And so I was like, how cute would it be if we could use this image to sort of like imply that the spider has moved house to like a new web, like new digs, new web. And that really sort of, to me, fed into this theme of mail and posting and delivery and all that sort of thing. So I loved that. I really loved that. And I wanted to incorporate all of these images into the journal somehow, like the timeline of like the various build stages of a web. So I cut these out. And then I was sort of thinking, well, how am I going to actually use all of these? Because obviously we've only got 8 slides in our little accordion journal. So I realized what I was going to have to do was, and it worked perfectly because it's yet another piece of interaction for this tiny journal, is to use some more dictionary pages to build out a slide, like a secondary accordion pullout within one slide of our journal. So this is another dictionary. It is a very small one, and it's different from the one I used to make the base of the journal pages. So that worked well because, you know, it's a little bit more contrast, something different, a little bit more interesting. And of course, the text is going to be running sideways. So again, something different and visually interesting for your eye. And I sort of took a similar approach to building this little pull out as I did for the pages of the journal. The only difference is obviously I needed to make sure I would have enough fascia for each of those stages of the build web images. So there's 5 of those. So I thought, well, I need obviously a face to stick it down and then a face to start with. So we've got, I think I ended up doing 6. Is it 6 or like 1, 2? Yeah, I think 6. I think it was 6 pages to pull out, because that then gave us 4 fascias plus a back page to stick down and then a front page as well. But don't quote me on that. We'll see in a moment when we get the image up here. But just taking the same approach where we've got not too thick a page, but enough where we could the page had a bit of weight to it so that it could carry and not buckle under, because that's the sort of thing, right? Like if your paper is too thin and it's made of that very wafer thin paper, your book pages, that once you start adding glue and all those things, they can sort of warp and buckle and things, and it's just can be so painful. So making sure using a dry glue to build up enough pages, enough weight to the pages that won't happen. And then I don't actually have any archival ink. I know that it's trendy, and you know that you can, it's definitely a beautiful product to work with. I did thrift some red at one point. I still haven't invested in any black though. So this is just a regular old stamp pad. And this is a label stamp that I've used many times over the course of my projects. And so I've made out 5 different labels there so that we can sort of label each of these 5 spiderweb images. And I've set those aside to dry. And then we're going to start building out our accordion here. So what did that end up being? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm just counting here. So I think it's 5 pages plus the back to stick it down. So then just using our bone folder to make sure that everything is smooth and crisp on the edges. And I just added some pretty washi tape, again in sort of neutral tones along the bottom there, just to bring out a little bit of something different. And by this time our labels were dry, so I went in and fussy cut those out so that we can label each of these webs. And I was sort of thinking, like, how do we want to do this, like stage 1, stage 2, what am I going to actually put on these labels? And I decided that actually a cute turn of phrase was what I would use. So, something along the lines of directing mail to our new address, because they've built a new house, a new web, would be the way to go here. So adding our really pretty labels, and that did also give me an excuse to use up more of that beautiful envelope paper and create a little bit of cohesion between all the pages as well. So keeping all the same materials beside you as you're working, even if it's a little bit of time between starting and finishing the project, will help create some cohesion in the work at the end. And I really love that. That's something that to me always looks really cool in these types of little art journals, where it's like a, kind of contained project, to keep using the same materials over and over again. So pop aside a little basket and just keep everything in that basket until the project is done, and then you can empty the basket. Always works for me. What also always works for me is adding some scrunched up tissue paper to the back of the page. I love it, and that I do it all the time. Every project, tissue paper scrunched up in little randomly torn pieces will help just build out the page. I did end up covering most of it up with these large images, but that's okay. That's all part of the process of journaling. But I again kept that tissue paper aside to use throughout the project, and just again keeping that cohesion between materials will really help in keeping everything feeling nice and put together. So sticking these images down in order of the web building process, so cute. I just really loved also that the images kind of got progressively bigger as well. Like it just sort of has like a nice little timeline to it, which I was really in love with. And then I've got these cute little letter stickers that came from out of a little typo tin, you know, how sometimes in their stationery area. I got these years ago, so I am just using a glue stick to help those along in sticking them down, just to make sure that not only because they're so tiny, so they have really small surface area, but also because I've had them for such a long time, I did not have confidence that that sticky sticker paper was going to have much structural integrity over time. So keeping those all stuck down with some glue, and they're so small that I needed my tweezers to get the actually to peel them and then get them down on the page in a cute little phrase. So then it's time to stick everything down, and obviously I'm just centering it in the middle of the page there, kind of, and then just making sure that as I've stuck it down, that once it folds up, it's not crooked when it unfolds, if that makes sense. So just getting that all stuck down nice and neat, and it's ready to go. So next we're going to tuck all of our spider legs in on each other, and this is where I sort of got to a point where I was like, oh no, it doesn't quite close properly around her body, because obviously there's a lot of brads in there and there's a lot of cardboard all folded in on top of each other, so it's quite dense, but you know, nothing that I couldn't sort of work my way around with some cheeky folding. So instead of it sliding in, it's sort of sliding under, which you'll see coming up. But I wanted to use my Uniball Eye, my favorite pen, to add some little just plain black and white airmail detail around the edge of the envelope. This is just so that when it's when it's closed, again, it's got some detail to it, and sort of also implies that it's mail, not just a gift card envelope or something. And this is when I realized that actually I could use pen on this rather than just pencil, and that it wouldn't seep through. So that was a lucky accident, happy accident, I think they say. So I thought, well, you know, it's time to start building out the rest of the pages for this book. So I found this really pretty neutral picture that I don't know where I got it from, just in like a little stash from the crafty section of the op shop. Sometimes you can find little pages of little packets of miscellaneous paper. So I stuck that down sort of in the hope that I could incorporate that other tiny envelope to that page, which is what I'm working on now. So after sticking down our spider puppet envelope, I then fussy cut this little black and white spider. Again, I'm not quite sure what species she is. She's very, very detailed and very pretty. And I thought, well, I'm going to live out my dream. She can hold the envelope. Like, I really wanted that tiny envelope to sit in the little legs of a spider. So this is how I'm making that work. And it also means that I can add, again, more interaction to a different page. So that actually worked out really well. Again, another happy little accident here. So tucking that envelope in and then coercing her legs up over the edge of the little envelope there. And I know what you're thinking. Now I've actually ended up creating an area for several more pages of slides now that we've added that extra accordion. That wasn't my intention, but, you know, it just was something that evolved on the day. So what I decided to do was create kind of, instead of making each of these slides something different, I decided to sort of create like a what do you call it? Like a repeated pattern almost for these pages. So we've got 4 panels, and I thought, well, I can then, offset it with something where it's like 3 and 1 rather than 4. So like, sort of breaking up the numbers. And I had a bunch of these cutlery holders that I'd like kept after I went out for dinner. Actually, it was lunch. I remember it was my brother's birthday. And I had 3 of these left over from that event in this craft cardboard color. Beautiful. And I really thought, wow, I can make these into little post boxes, again keeping in the theme. So trimming those down, and again, this was something where later on I realized that I had not really taken into account folding and movement when I was measuring these. So they were big enough, or should I say small enough, to fit onto each page, but they ended up being a bit too big to fold evenly, sitting self-contained within each panel. So again, I just rolled with it when it came to this point, because I'd already done all of this work, which, as you can see, has involved using some stencils to create a little opening there at the top. And then I did just use a piece of plastic out of off the lid of a blueberry container to tuck down in there so that I could use my knife to cut that out. If you have a die cut machine or some other way of creating this sort of pocket envelope, certainly do that. I just wanted to use what I had here. And then I've used a different stencil. I thrift all my stencils, FYI. It's a great way of creating a collection of different letters that you can use and different shapes for things like this, where you want just like a basic shape or a hole or something for your work. Again, I've just used my Uniball eye to trace out those post letters and add a little border to that. And then I'm just going back in with like a little bit more of a chunky texture to outline the little mail slot on each of these little post boxes. I should have mentioned also, I did use not a proper corner rounder. I just used a bit of washi tape to create the rounded edges on the pocket. And now I've just added some black paper, which has some dry glue on the back, glue stick, to cover up the back of those and give those a little bit of dimension. Now this giant, enormous spider, again, I don't know what species she is, but she is magnificent. Look at her. So incredible. So she is going to be our mail person today, our postal delivery officer, and I've fussy cut her out so that she can be on the 4th panel, sort of reaching across each of our 3 post boxes, delivering the mail. And I've just got this cheapy paper pad that I've had for ages here. It's just got all different sort of swirly handwritten text on it, and I sort of wanted to create some little journal cards out of that. And I've just again folded them over. On one of them, on this particular one, I was able to just sort of fold it over as is. On the other 2, I sort of had to hodgepodge them together to create the right size and shape, as well as then having just that top bit exposed for the front of the journal card. Like I couldn't just fold them over is what I mean. Like that one, I sort of had to, Frankenstein them all together so that sort of clean and interesting look was on the front and not too fussy. Then I've got some really pretty bird stamps, again in the neutral tones. These are some really pretty postage stamps from New Zealand Mail. I collected up a bunch of New Zealand stamps for doing my New Zealand travel journal. And then it's a matter of figuring out what other ephemera to add to these 3 journal cards. That again implies mail, but also just adding prettiness and decoration at this point. So I've got 3 black and white images from that same spider book. I did end up swapping out that middle large spider image for one that was sort of similar to the other two there, just so there was a bit more cohesion. And then fussy cut out some moths from this really cute moth book that I have, Moths of the British Isles. Such a sensational book for adding beautiful vintage illustrations to your work, especially if you fussy cut them out. So pretty. And then going through again cohesiveness here by doing some more watercolor on the post boxes. It's just going to age them up a little bit and also just made them look a little bit less like a piece of cardboard. I will say, however, that I did really make a conservative effort to keep that water away from my ink on the page and the texture around the opening there of the mail slot. That's very important because you don't want anything to run, unless that's the look you're going for, something a bit more grungy, then that's fine. So gluing these down, it's time to sort of build these journal cards up now. I did corner around these little images here and sticking those down and just sort of figuring out how to actually build the page, because sometimes you got to sort of work on that and figure out what's the best layout for them. I didn't want them to all be identical, but I did want them to seem like they belong together as a set. So I've sort of played around with different variations on the layout, but of course they all sort of look like they're from the same family. So just putting those together, blending them with all those beautiful images, so pretty. And then again, washi tape along the bottom here, and this was a really cheap and cheerful washi tape that I got from, I think I just got it from like the cheap shop in a pack. So I do kind of just go to the effort of adding some glue underneath the washi tape and stickers, because I just don't trust that they're going to stay stuck down. Especially if they've been like cheap ones or ones you've had for a really long time, or even things you've thrifted, because you just don't know how old they are and where they've been stored, if they've been stored in hot areas and things like that. So gluing that down and getting everything ready to start assembling these pages, I used that same tissue paper pieces for our postal delivery spider, and just going to build that page out because I knew she wouldn't fill the whole page. So it just sort of, again, adds a little bit more detail and interest, and also helps to separate all of your images as well. So you can still see through it and get the detail of the text, but it does just help to blend everything without things looking too fussy. Now, this is where, the worst happened. But I wanted to include this rather than redoing everything, because I didn't want to redo everything. This is part of paper crafting. Not everything is going to work out every time, right? And with this particular project, I didn't really plan it. I sort of made it up as I went along, which is how I kind of tend to craft, like a bit more freeform and just enjoy the process. So you can see here that I've managed to overlap these. They were just a bit too thick. So the way I got around this was actually aligning the side that was going to be in the ditch. So in the join of the page, align them to that, and then have the external edges hang out, right? So so that when it opens, they are overlapped, but when it's shut, they're not overlapped. Does that make sense? So you can see there along the left side of the join, they are sticking out, but they're all stuck down and they're not going to go anywhere. And it just so happens that when you open it, they are a little bit overlapped. So that's not going to bother me. I just, at this point, I'd made the post boxes, I'd made the beautiful journal cards. We're moving on. And it's just part of the charm and the character of the piece that you're working on. I love that about our craft, that, it's just it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not perfection. It's about enjoying the process. And I did have such fun with building out these interactive parts of this journal. So, we're moving on. We're moving on. And it worked. It physically does work. So that's the most important thing, right? Like I can still interact with the journal, and that's more important than, one of them being slightly overlapped. It's fine. So we glued down our postal delivery spider and trimmed her legs off so that they weren't hanging out. She was so massive. She didn't quite fit. All encompassing, so we had to trim her down a little bit. And then we're up to the gorgeous decorating stage. I sort of raided my stash for some neutral stickers and things that just sort of felt like they belonged. Again, a lot of my pieces are things that I've had for a long time and that I've bought cheaply. I don't really buy a lot of pre-made stickers and stuff. I tend to sort of like to make my own things, but I do like to use up what I've got. So these are some pieces that have been from kits and things, or packs, cheap packs and things like that. So a little postal stamp sticker on the page with the tiny envelope, just some numbers and various sort of symbol-y kind of stickers for the large envelope there with the spider puppet inside. We've got some stamping happening on the, again, large envelope. Still in the decorating phase, I decided to just finish off the journal cards by adding some more beautiful faux stitching. It just sort of gives them a border, makes them feel a bit more finished. I didn't actually add anything to the back of these journal cards. I'm still debating in my mind whether that's something I want to do. And I think as we enter part 2 of this project, it's definitely something I'll have hopefully think about and just plan out if we need to add anything more. There's always an opportunity then to build out the theming of the art journal even more at that point. So I'll definitely have a think about that. I've got some of these PET stickers. Again, they're just cheap ones that I've had for a while now, and I just at this point just want to really use them up. But they add some really nice transparent detail, like if I was to stick some actual images of plants over this, it would cover up a lot of that detail that I've added with the post text. So again, just make them work for you if that's what you've got. And again, some more stamping just with that same stamp pad. It's not fancy. I should probably get some archival ink for my projects at this point, but you know what? This is what I've got, and I encourage you to do the same. Like, exploit to the fullest extent what you already have before you go out and buy something new, especially if you are buying it new and not secondhand. So I'm just using the remaining ink on that stamp to just dot around, add a little bit more detail where I can, and then tying in some of the some more of that washi tape from the front side of this additional accordion to this post box. I just sort of wanted to give each post box a little bit of something, a little bit of flavor here and there. It doesn't have to make sense, absolutely not. And I think that it just made them feel a bit more detailed and a bit more finished, a bit more, I don't know, and also a bit more used, what's the word? A bit more worn in, I guess. A bit more worn in, not so fresh and new. Just sort of break in the page a little bit more with some, just some various, bits of whatever. And that sort of ended up being a nice way to finish off decorating. Likewise, I went back in with the same pencils that I used for the watercolor, but didn't add water this time. Just some very, very gentle working in on the edges and corners and things. So once I'd done that, it was done. So this is where I got to with this part 1 of our little spider mail journal. And oh my goodness, I'm so happy with it because it really is fitting into all of my interactive dreams for this journal. I really wanted each little fold, and that's why I didn't make it too big, because I really wanted each page and each little panel within this accordion journal to have something interactive to do. So the first panel being obviously our little articulated spider puppet, which is sitting inside of this really fun little handmade envelope. And, you know, obviously she can bend and be sort of moved into all different shapes, and her legs can sort of go one way or the other. And then, which I love how she turned out, especially after we added that extra painting to sort of make her tie in with the colors of this journal a bit more. Then on panel 2, we've got our little teeny tiny envelope, which inside holds a little sort of pull out flap of the definition of spider. Then as we go into panel number 3, we actually ended up adding a whole other extra accordion pull out, which on one side has 3 post boxes, each containing a little mail inspired or letter inspired journal card with some images of spiders and moths and some gorgeous New Zealand bird postage stamps, all in that neutral theme, as well as our beautiful fussy cut postal delivery spider lady. Then on the other side we have our 5-stage spider web construction panel progression images, connotating a little situation where the spider has moved into a new house, and please direct the mail to our new address, which actually makes my heart so happy. I think it might be my favorite part of the journal so far. So that is our first part of this interactive spider mail themed little mini journal constructed out of some vintage mini dictionary pages. I really hope you've enjoyed this little part 1 video. Obviously, we still need to make a little cover for it and fill up the rest of the journal panels on the other side with some more interactive paper crafts. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to see where we get to with this piece. It's so far giving everything that I'd hoped. And that's going to wrap things up for today, but I look forward to seeing you next week. I am hopefully back on a schedule with my videos again, and I do want to round out spooky season with the completion of this project, as well as one other one that I really want to get done before October is over. So I will see you then. In the meantime, I want to wish you a very happy crafting, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.